afternoon. I want to thank everyone for having me here today, and I also want to thank everyone at Texas A&M and the Borlaug Institute. They're watching this right now. I'm sorry you're taking your lunch to do this, but thank you for supporting me. My grandfather was credited with saving 1 billion lives for his pioneering work in wheat production that was ultimately called the Green Revolution. He was a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, the Medal of Freedom, and the Congressional Medal, He had a lifelong passion for and devotion to feeding what he would call the hungry and miserable. And this passion was truly amazing. He never faltered or tired of this battle. And much like my grandfather's Green Revolution that saved millions from starvation, we have a moral imperative to do the same. My grandfather was many things: a teacher, a warrior against hunger, but first and foremost, he was a scientist. He often said the fear of change was the greatest obstacle to progress. He came down on the side of innovation and was known for being bold and quick to act. He was a fierce advocate for innovation and technological change, especially when it came to smallholder farmers in developing countries. His most potent view of science was that man's most advanced knowledge and technology must be used in the battle against hunger and poverty. Many of you, and I'm going to speak to the students, many of you in this room might be wondering how you can help us solve this problem without having an agricultural background. Well, the answer is simple. To meet this challenge, it will require new, innovative economic and political policies, new rounds of advancements in engineering, medicine, energy, education, as well as agriculture. This will require the collaborative commitment of people across multiple sectors and disciplines. And I just want to highlight 3 people who are outside of ag who are truly making a difference. And that's Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They started with health, with vaccinations, with medicines to deal with AIDS and malaria, and they quickly realized when you have a population that's starving and malnourished, it doesn't matter how much medicine you provide them, it won't make a difference. So they came into agriculture. If you look at Howard Buffett, he quickly realized that if he wasn't able to make a positive change on the agricultural practices of those who were using slash and burn, the life of the cheetah in Africa was going to become extinct, so he got involved. And then if you look at the 1 Acre Fund, the founder, Andrew Wan, he's a graduate of Yale. He has an MBA from Kellogg, but he has one of the most innovative, impactful programs that's helping farmers in Africa. So all students look up 1 Acre Fund. Or if you look at it this way, if you care about health and human suffering, 1.9 million children die each year of hunger-related illnesses. You've already heard 1 billion are malnourished and another billion are obese. If you care about world peace and national security, you should note that countries with food issues are some of the most unstable. Look at the Arab Spring. Much can be tied to food prices. And most importantly, if you care about women, the role of women, and empowering women, you care about agriculture. Thus, global food security is everyone's problem, but it's something each of us has a role in changing. Please remember, you're never too young to make an impact and change. My grandfather's research in shuttle breeding, which is what made the Green Revolution possible, happened in his 30s. And please know that one person can make a difference. As it was with the Green Revolution, the success of feeding 9 billion by 2050 will depend on your generation. Entrepreneurs, scientists, educators, researchers, policymakers, farmers, the people my grandfather called his hunger fighters. We must embrace innovation, creativity, bold ideas, but most importantly, to feed 9 billion, we need young, brave minds. So I hope all of you here in this room watching, and also those watching, will accept this challenge and finally end hunger and misery. And one last thing, for those who have not had the opportunity to travel abroad and see hunger and poverty and the plight of female farmers, and after today, every student should have an international internship, but if you haven't had that opportunity, please take the time to read The Last Hunger Season by Roger Thoreau. You can download it, phenomenal book, and through reading that, you will understand why I and so many other people in this room share my grandfather's passion about ending this challenge and this hunger. Speaking of my grandfather's passion and legacy, I'm truly honored to introduce our next guest, USAID Administrator Raj Shah. I know Raj admired my grandfather But I know and I believe that it was my grandfather who truly had the utmost respect and admiration for Dr. Shah. My grandfather knew under his leadership, USAID would once again return to its original purpose, as well as bring agricultural research, develop, and innovation back to the forefront. Prior to joining USAID in 2010, Raj worked for the USDA and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He has a medical degree from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's in economic health from Wharton. He attended the London School of Economics, graduated from the University of Michigan. As always, I feel a little like an underachiever when I'm standing next to Raj, as I'm sure most people do. But in all seriousness, I consider him a close friend, and more importantly, a champion of those who experience hunger and poverty daily. So I want to thank Raj for being here today, and most importantly, for helping bring innovation that will help feed the world. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. It's a real honor to be introduced by Julie Borlaug. There's no person on the planet that is doing more to carry forward her grandfather's legacy with class and poise and focus and persistence than Julie, and so we're all blessed to have her with us here today. I also want to thank Frank Cesno for putting today together and leading this effort, and so many colleagues and friends that are here to work together to end hunger and poverty and malnutrition around the world. We have colleagues from the State Department, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I think the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and so many other parts of this government, because President Obama is deeply committed to the goal of ending hunger and poverty once and for all. The slide behind me is a photo of President Obama when he was in Senegal this summer. In Senegal, he had a chance to meet with farmers who've been beneficiaries of a program we launched under the President's leadership called Feed the Future. Feed the Future today, and during this visit, the President released this report, which shows that after a number of years of persistent focus, Feed the Future now reaches 7 million farmers in more than 19 countries around the world. These are usually women farmers. They're usually working small plot farms. They're providing food for their families and selling whatever excess food they have in commercial markets to earn income to buy school uniforms or pay for textbooks and other necessary goods for their children. Their welfare and their well-being is very much on the forefront of the global fight to end hunger, extreme poverty, and malnutrition. Since 2005, poverty rates have fallen by an average of 5.6% and stunting by an average of 6% in Feed the Future focus countries. And that's on an annualized basis. This just shows that it is now possible to imagine a world without large, widespread hunger and malnutrition. But how are we going to get there? I've been asked to highlight a few core innovations that can help our planet produce more food, but specifically help those who are least fortunate amongst us, but are food producers, do better themselves so that their increased crop production directly improves their incomes and their community's nutrition. I'd like to highlight 5 of these potential breakthroughs. The first is one that is not perhaps new to many of you, but it is this sweet potato, which you see in the background behind me. This sweet potato, if I can break it, is an orange flesh sweet potato that has been enhanced to include a higher degree of beta-carotene and vitamin A. Children who take and substitute traditional white flesh sweet potato with orange flesh sweet potato in Bangladesh, Uganda, and Mozambique get more than 50% of their necessary requirement for vitamin A from just switching to use this product. The good news for the kids, of course, is that it tastes sweeter and is softer as well. But the reality is that basic technological breakthrough, which may not seem like much, can help to eliminate disease and malnutrition related to vitamin A deficiency, which is widespread, particularly among the least fortunate children around the world. Second is climate-resilient crops. Climate-resilient crops have offer us a tremendous opportunity to produce more food, particularly in environments where there's either more drought or more floods, but where the risks to farmers who are producing food are increasing, and we nevertheless expect them to invest more in their agriculture and produce more output. These are just corn cobs, as you know, stalks, and you can see that if we can simply have more robust corn crops in parts of the world that depend on corn production, maize in Africa, for example, we can help to eliminate weather-based or drought-based famine and malnutrition. We can reduce what we commonly call the hunger season during that period of time. We now are seeing for the first time data that show that a new product that has been developed in East Africa with a partnership with private companies, the World Bank, the United States government, and many, many local research partners, is producing a hybrid corn variety just like this that is actually more resilient to local diseases, performs better in local growing conditions, and importantly, during medium drought environments, produces 30% more yield, which means that when farmers have access to it, they can actually survive even during bad rainfall years. We're seeing the same in stress-tolerant rices, and the following video, I think, will illustrate what's possible if we use some of these new rices more frequently in flood-prone areas. This demonstration of regular versus flood-tolerant rice in the Philippines shows what's possible if we use better inputs. Flooding costs an estimated 4 million tons of rice a year, enough to feed 30 million people. The results you just saw, on the left, 3.8 million tons per hectare versus on the right, 1.4 million tons per hectare, are an example of what's possible with products and technologies that are safe, approved, have already been developed, and are being deployed in Asia as we speak as a result of Feed the Future. The next technology I want to highlight, the third one, is deep urea placement. This is, I wish you all could have seen President Obama use this in Senegal, but he took a urea tablet, a little briquette, and use this to plant that briquette into the ground. And you put it in here and you press this down, and it places the briquette near the seed, under the soil, under the top layer of the soil. And what we find by deploying this in parts of the world, like Bangladesh, is that you can get 20 to 70% yield improvements while reducing the amount of nitrogen necessary by 40 to 50%. So it's less costly than traditional fertilizer, has a better impact on yields and outcomes, and has allowed Bangladesh's Barisal region to produce its first ever rice surplus, which they did in 2011. The fourth technology doesn't look like much, and if you were tasting it, wouldn't taste like much either. But it's these simple, ready-to-use therapeutic foods. And we all know that nutritional supplements provided to children in the first 1,000 days, when a mother is pregnant and during the first 2 years of life, can change the lifetime brain development of that child by improving that child's access to basic micronutrients. These kinds of new science-based products, including a NutriButter product that we're distributing right now to every family we reach inside of Syria, and Plumpy Nut-like products that we're delivering to so many other families in the Horn of Africa or the Sahel, are able to very rapidly resuscitate children. And it's why during famines and crises, when it used to be the case that 21% of acutely malnourished children would die. Today, that's down under 5%. And we're going to get that even farther down by creating and developing these new technologies. One of the best parts about this is a photo of me with the Rhode Island delegation in Providence, Rhode Island, where a great new company called Adhesia is producing these advanced nutritional products right here in the United States, creating 50 jobs in Rhode Island, with the potential to grow that while also reaching families in need in Somalia and Syria every single day. So these are some of the technologies. Oh, there's one additional one that you know very, very well that I want to highlight because it's now in the hands of virtually everyone we need to reach, and it's a cell phone. And we now know that nearly every single small-scale farmer around the world who is fighting on the front line of ending hunger, ending extreme poverty, and ending child malnutrition has access to a cell phone. And on it, they can check market prices, they can check local prices for other inputs, and they can just communicate with each other, sending photos in some cases of their crops to scientists thousands of miles away that can then give them guidance on how to improve their productivity. The other 4 technologies I showed you, plus the power of this phone, can in fact transform the face of hunger and poverty. And that's precisely what we're trying to do with Feed the Future. So I'll conclude just by noting that the United States has been very focused through Feed the Future on investing in science and technology to transform the face of hunger and poverty around the world. And today we are proud to announce that we are going to create 10 new Feed the Future innovation labs together with American universities and their global partners. Some of the universities will be University of Georgia, Kansas State, the University of California at Davis, Penn State, Texas A&M, the University of California at Riverside, and the University of Texas in El Paso. And it is true that we believe that the power of American innovation, applied thoughtfully in coordination with our international partners and focused fundamentally on the small-scale producers that we've talked about here today, can come together to change the face of poverty. And thank each of you. I want to thank each of you for taking time today to participate in this fight to end hunger and poverty as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Have a seat. So we're going to spend a few minutes chatting about this and open it up to your questions. We've gotten some Twitter questions already. I want to ask you about these centers that you're doing and what the role for the students are going to be there, because we've got students from universities, from this university, and students from all over the country. What is the role of young people in these centers?
Well, we're hopeful that young people can be researchers and as they develop their own disciplinary expertise in agricultural sciences or any other area of work, they can contribute to projects and programs that have application all around the world to end hunger and poverty. We also are hopeful that students will, through this effort, kind of become exposed to, some of the more profound applications of their new talent, and hopefully get motivated to spend at least part of their career working on these kinds of problems.
I was asking the administrator backstage before we came out here, did you do something, when you were in school or right out of school that sort of launched you? And you said?
I said after college, I spent 6 months working on a tuberculosis and health project in rural South India, in a rainforest actually, and that exposed me to both the opportunity to serve, and for me, up until that point, I hadn't really fully witnessed or participated in any effort to do anything about the kind of poverty around the world.
So you both connected with the problem, and it in a sense gave you a sense of empowerment about what you as an individual might be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and I also got to see, more importantly, I was just a graduate of college at that point and not quite as capable as today's graduates with all the tools and technologies. I got to see what, in that case, a gentleman named Dr. H. Sudarshan, who had created this big program that was reaching tens of thousands of people. I saw what he was able to do, and I became very inspired by his example.
I'll go to the Twitter questions in a minute, but I want to ask you one follow-up to your innovations there. You didn't mention gender, and one of the big issues that's changing the face of agriculture, and it's a persistent trend around the world, is the rising influence and role of women farmers. How is USAID, how are your innovations targeting or assisting women farmers around the world?
Well, you know, you're exactly right that the focus on women is the key to success, which is why we launched something called the Women's Empowerment Index, and we measure in every one of our Feed the Future programs the impact of our efforts on women specifically. So even when we're looking at, does a farm household have more income and more food access, we're studying that specifically for what kind of benefits accrue to women. Because we know that those benefits then are more likely to reach children and communities and move people out of poverty.
Why is this trend happening, more women on the farm?
Well, to be honest, I don't know how much of it is a trend and how much of it is just the baseline, but certainly in sub-Saharan African countries where we have Feed the Future programs, 60 or 70% of total labor on a farm is provided by a woman. Even in male-headed households, a lot of the actual labor is provided by women. And unfortunately, a lot of the traditional efforts to reach farmers have focused on men or have not been focused enough on women to differentiate and make a difference.
You talked about your enhanced product, the sweet potato, which
Yeah.
sounds good just looking at it. Sounds good just looking at it. Let me work on that. And we heard earlier today the GMO discussion and debate, and Amy Harden talked about golden rice. Much of what you're doing captures the innovation that's taking place in terms of enhancing these foods here. But in many countries in Africa, even in the Philippines, there is great resistance, in some cases outright opposition to genetically modified foods. What does that say about the future of that trajectory, of that innovation? And is that opposition intractable?
Well, first I should say nothing I showed you actually relies on transgenic technology. So sometimes we go very quickly to that debate, which is one I'll answer directly, but everything I showed you, these huge, massive improvements in what's possible, come from very basic and very standard technological approaches that wouldn't count as GMO. So there's really no, in my view, excuse for us as a global community to not ensure that those basic solutions get in the hands of everyone who needs them as we work to end hunger and poverty. On GMOs and transgenic technologies, you know, it's appropriate to have a debate and discussion, but it's also appropriate to allow farmers to make their own decisions based on access to regulated, approved technologies that are demonstrated to be safe. And when you see agricultural research systems all around the world do the appropriate testing, do the appropriate regulatory processes, approve products and technologies, at that point, farmers should have access to them. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, we talk a lot about, in this country, traits that have come out of transgenic technologies that have certain types of characteristics. I think we don't talk enough about traits that could be developed in the future that produce micronutrient-enhanced foods, that produce drought tolerance for very, very vulnerable families, that really provide the kinds of benefits that can reach the world's poorest producers and change their lives. And I think if we started to talk more about that, you'd see less resistance to the technology.
Let me go to some of the questions that have come to us via Twitter and elsewhere to get some of the folks here involved in the conversation. What can we do for people, is this first question, what can we do for people in countries where food isn't considered a right?
Well, you know, food should be available to everybody. And we started, I think, the last speaker quoted Dr. Borlaug in making that point more eloquently. Food should be considered a right. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily translate, even in the countries that say that, that doesn't mean they don't have big percentages of their population going without enough food, and then a huge percentage of children not getting enough micronutrients, enough quality food. So I think it's appropriate to sort of advocate for food as a right. I also think it is absolutely essential that we work together to say, how do we get into the hands of farmers the tools and technologies that can transform their production systems? How do we ensure that every child is getting basic micronutrients so they're not stunted or wasted and they can actually grow and learn and thrive? and that we think of it as more of a responsibility to measure who's not kind of getting the right access and take concrete steps and make the right investments, as President Obama has, to ensure that we're putting more resources into getting people basic tools and technologies.
How can we work together, you just said? So that leads to the next question. What is one thing average Americans can do to help feed the planet?
Well, I think first you have to be aware of the extent to which hunger is a challenge. 860 million people around the world being hungry is a huge, huge challenge.
And in America
today.
too, by the way.
And absolutely,
we're not off the hook in this.
Absolutely in America, especially for children in what we now call food deserts here in the United States. And just like we can go to a soup kitchen or a service project and express our commitment to our fellow Americans, I think we can take actions to engage on solving world hunger.
So if someone in this audience, or someone who's watching this webcast, wants to take action to address this global issue, what should they do?
Well, it depends on who you, there's things everyone can do. You can be aware, you can advocate that we expend resources. We spend less than 1% of our federal budget on any kind of foreign commitment, including paying for all our embassies abroad as well. The amount we spend on actually trying to eradicate hunger is extraordinarily small, and you can advocate for America to do more in that regard. You can, if you're a student, you can participate in student groups and science groups and internship opportunities to be involved in the bigger fight. If you're in the agricultural industry and you run a company or at a company, start a focus group or get your board and your executive management team to say, okay, we're going to put X number of person hours from our food and agriculture company into the fight against world hunger. And we're going to partner with USAID or partner with the World Bank or others who can help facilitate your engagement into these markets and these areas where too many people are still using very antiquated production systems and as a result, not getting enough food to eat.
You mentioned internships, and I should say that USAID has an internship that they're going to make available to people in this room if you're interested, and you can get information at the USAID desk in the lobby. But what might an intern do at your agency?
Well, if you're interested, please do go to the booth because we'd love to have as many interns as possible. And there are two ways we're doing this. One is we've expanded our own internship programs at USAID. We'd love to have you. It's a competitive process, but I get to meet with and learn from and hear about what many of our interns have been able to do. And they usually commit themselves to a specific project, and they're able to both contribute but also learn. How do you measure and evaluate whether a particular effort is successful? How do you design programs to make sure that you're reaching women or being respectful of local cultures and economic systems? In addition to that, we have worked with our partners to make a number of internships available abroad. And this is a really exciting effort, and we'd love to try to facilitate your being placed with any one of our wonderful partners in more than 70 countries around the world, where they've said, look, we could use interns to do the following things. So it's a great way to get connected and start doing this kind of work, and it's a great way, hopefully, to also apply your technical skill to the challenge of ending hunger.
You mentioned the size of the budget a moment ago, and that takes me to the next question from Jennifer via Twitter. When it comes to food security, how can we promote stronger political will and bipartisanship in Congress? We're hanging on every word here.
Look, it's unbelievable to people, but America has led the world in fighting hunger for more than 6 decades. And we've done it through Republican and Democratic administrations. We've done it through Republican and Democratic-led Congresses. And we've done it because there have been a coalition of partners across liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans and everybody in between that have said that, look, for a negligible amount of our public expenditure, we can create a world that is safer, is more secure. We can avoid food riots and famines and crises. We can avoid the need to send our military into situations that arise when people are fighting or are hungry or fighting over scarce water and food resources. And it's the forward defense of our country. It's a smart and efficient way to ensure we live in a world that's stable and prosperous and not a world that requires America to be a continually engaged police force at a much higher cost to our own future. So hopefully you all can be part of that effort of building that broad coalition that now includes corporate leaders and faith leaders, scientists, university presidents, and perhaps most importantly, students.
10 seconds, maybe 20, for you to answer this question. Somebody in the audience says, I like what he's doing. I want his job someday. How should they go about getting that job?
I'll tell you, you'll find many great opportunities to serve. My advice would be, as soon as you can, if you're a student or a young person, is get some experience and find out if working in this field feels right to you. It is incredibly personally rewarding. And it can also be a place where you apply real technical skill, whether it's scientific discipline or social sciences or anything else. Jim Kim is an anthropologist as well as a doctor and is now the president of the World Bank. So I'm sorry I don't have a great direct answer, but my advice to folks who are interested is get some experience as soon as you can. No matter what you end up doing with your life, you'll look back on that fondly, and just maybe it'll change the trajectory of your career.
Get involved and has something to do with hard work. Raj Shah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.